I would like to tell you about my passion for exploration. And for me, exploration is not just going into the unknown. For me, exploration consists of three elements. It's good science, it's adventurous expedition, and it's also compelling storytelling. And I was extremely lucky to be on the project, to be a chief of the project that really had all those three elements, and I would like to share some of the feelings about that project with you. I called it Ghost from the Abyss of the Baltic Sea, and when for the first time I told my friends from United States that I worked with on that project that I'm going to make something about one of the largest maritime tragedies of all times at the sea. As you mentioned, they were thinking about the ship that they know very well. They were thinking about the Titanic. And of course, they were thinking about Titanic only because they lost a very important person on the Titanic. They lost Leonardo DiCaprio. But in fact, it's not Titanic that was the largest maritime tragedy. The largest three maritime tragedies happened in the Baltic Sea, and it's Goya, Wilhelm Gustloff, and the Steuben. And I was lucky enough to make research on the third of them, on the Steuben, and to make my story about it. It all began with this picture. It's not a real picture made using visible light. It's the sonogram. So it's the picture that is made with sound waves, because sound waves penetrate much better water than the visible light. Visible light disappears after 10, maybe 20 meters in the Baltic Sea, and the sound waves can penetrate stop the time.
You'll get more, okay.
Okay. And the sound waves can penetrate the abyss of the Baltic Sea really, really deep. So I got this image from Polish Navy, and they told me, well, we have a wreck, we don't know what it is. We sat down, started to think about the possibilities, and very quickly we discovered it was probably the Steuben. Steuben, Gustloff, and Goya, those three wrecks that are sometimes called Baltic Titanics, they all were engaged in the largest evacuation operation of all times, which was called Operation Hannibal. And it was withdrawal of German forces, German civilians, German wounded soldiers in the end of the World War II, in fact, in the last months of the World War II. And all three of them were torpedoed by two Soviet submarines. And as you can see here, they lay in Polish economical zone. They were sunk all in 1945, and Wilhelm Gustloff wreck was discovered right after the war by Soviet divers and was penetrated very well. Goya shipwreck was discovered in 2002 by Polish divers, and the Steuben shipwreck was discovered by Polish Navy. I started to do my research on it. I went to, very quickly, I found pictures like this. It was very nice. Steuben was very nice ship. She was 170 meters long. Now we know that it took about 4,500 victims, was torpedoed with two torpedoes. Here you can see the picture when she was in her beauty. And she was really very beautiful ship. The project started when I went to Washington to my friends at National Geographic Society, and I offered them to make a story about Steuben and about the other wrecks, also mentioning also those two other wrecks. So I told them, well, I would like to make an expedition. I would like to dig in the archives, to dig in the German archives, to dig in the Russian archives. I would like to meet the survivors. I would like to meet also the submarine sailors from Russia. And to make it all, I need really big budget. And they told me, well, okay, write down the project and give me your numbers, give me your budget that you would like to have. So, you know, I was a little bit surprised. They were pretty easy about it. And I asked them, okay, so tell me if there are any limits on the money. And they told me, sky is the limit. It was a long time ago, before iPad and before internet stole all the readers from the paper. Now it will never happen until Steve Jobs come up with some iMag magazine or something like that. But they told me, okay, you can do all you want. And I started with sending the photographer, Marzena Chmielewicz, she's here with us, and she joined next Navy mission to make inspection of the wreck. She joined the mission during which Navy officers were able to make some more research using sonars, using ROVs, which is remotely operated vehicle, which is the robot basically that goes under the water with a long cable. And they were able to produce wonderful images like this. It's the image made using the multi-beam 3D sonar. And when I first saw that image, I thought, well, that's a great help. That will be great help for the divers. When we finally go to dive on the wreck, which is very deep, it's on the 72 meters of the depth of 72 meters, it will be great help because we can see that she's lying on her left side, more or less 90 degrees, so we will know how to swim on the wreck. But I didn't know what are those strange red shapes, like something falling down, like a waterfall. And I thought maybe it's some kind of noise, some hydroacoustic noise, but later I realized that it's not a noise. There are fishing nets. And fishing nets on the shipwreck are very dangerous for the divers because you may get entangled in the fishing nets, and then you are in deep trouble. You are in deep water, you have limited resource of air, of breathing mixture, in fact, and you need to get out somehow. And we had such accident. Fortunately, it was not dangerous. So when finally Americans told, yes, I was able to go and dig first in German archives. So I found that Steuben was built in Szczecin, was built in 20s, in 1923 exactly, and it was built as a most elegant German liner. She was designed to be absolutely top of the top and cream of the cream. And even was improved twice, was rebuilt twice to be absolutely the best ship in German fleet. So there was very nice interior, very nice menu, very elegant guests. During the war, of course, everything changed. During the war, it was a refugee ship. She took the refugees from the east to the west. She made about 20 journeys, and we have even the picture from the last journey, which is in the middle, in the lower row, in the middle, and it doesn't look like a ship that is elegant. What I found was that she was torpedoed on February 10th, 1945, with about 5,000 people on board, and only 659 were rescued. So then I went to find survivors, and I was lucky enough to find 5 survivors. This man, Gerhard Depke, he was a soldier. Interestingly, before he was on the East Front, and was wounded and was packed on the Steuben, he fought in Warsaw. His division, Hermann Goering division, fought in Warsaw. This man was, working on the Steuben, and he told me a very interesting story about the last moments of the ship when Nazi German soldiers committed suicides, something that was not mentioned before in the books. This gentleman survived. He also worked. He was 16 years old only. He is the one who is mentioned in the famous book idąc rakiem. I don't remember the English name. And he decided to devote his life to make a documentation of all this refugee operation, of all this withdrawal from the east to the west in the last days of war. And she was half Polish, she's half Polish, half German. She was on the Steuben. Her name is Lena Zichelschmidt, and she was going because she was afraid of the Soviet army atrocities. She told me that she was not afraid as a half Polish to stay in Poland, but Nazi German propaganda create a kind of panic. So people decided that it would be much wiser to flee from East Prussia than to stay. And she traveled on her feet with a friend for 2 weeks before getting to the port, and she was smuggled by sailors on the Steuben because she didn't have any kind of ticket. She was so thin and so small that she could get on the ship through the porthole. So when I knew everything about the German side of that story, I went to Russia. I wanted to investigate the Russian part of the story. I wanted to find the truth about the submarine that torpedoed the Steuben. And unfortunately, the captain of the submarine died in '63. I was not able to interview the last guy from the crew of the submarine because he refused to speak with the journalist from the West. That's me. Because he told that he doesn't want to be accused of any kind of atrocities. He doesn't want to explain anything that was so obvious during the war. But I met children. Thank you. But I met children of the captain of the submarine. And they told me many extremely interesting stories about their father and about the life of this guy who torpedoed first Wilhelm Gustloff and 10 days later the Steuben. His name was Alexander Marinesko. He was Ukrainian with Romanian roots, and he was a kind of Rambo. He was very brave. He was very talented. He was the man who was loved by his crew, but at the same time, he was really hated by his commanders. He was a little bit of a guy who always army has problems with. So they sent him to the most difficult missions, submarine missions. First, because they knew that he would do it. He would be able to fire torpedoes exactly when and where the other captains will not be able to get to. But also, I think they hoped that in one of the missions he would just die. I was lucky to find historical pictures from that mission when he was sent to Finland in late 1944, and from Finland he went down to South Baltic, which is now Polish border. Before I come to this map, let me tell a short story. When he was in Finland, it will illustrate you better the kind of personality Alexander Marinesko had. He loved to party. And as a Russian, we can understand Russians, they have this beautiful feeling of enjoying life in the parties. And he made a big party during New Year's Eve on December 31st, 1944. Unfortunately, at the same time as he was partying with just met girl, there was an alarm in the naval base. So he was asked to come back to his submarine, and he refused because he wanted to party. And he showed up in the naval base 2 days later, and unfortunately, as you can imagine, they wanted to execute him immediately. But they could not do it. His commander could not do it because he was so experienced soldier, he was so good submariner that they didn't want to harm him. But they sent him and told, okay, I жду тебя с победой, which means I'm waiting for you with the victory. So he went down to the South Baltic, and as you can see on this map that I found in the Russian archives, he was waiting with his submarine for some ships to torpedo. And he torpedoed first Wilhelm Gustloff with the loss of maybe, nobody knows, between 5,200 and 10,000 people. And 10 days later, as you can see on this map, he torpedoed the Steuben. That's how the artist imagined the moment of firing the torpedo. He came back to the naval base, and he thought that after sinking 2 Nazi German ships, he would be greeted as a hero. And he thought that he would receive the title of the hero of the Soviet Union, but he didn't. That's because the insubordination of the New Year's night. He was transferred to another ship from the submarine to the minesweeper, which he thought it was something very bad for him. Then he was fired from the army. Then he was fired from his next job, which was commercial fishing vessel. Finally, he ended up in the Transfusion Institute in Leningrad. And he was fired from there too, because of his very difficult personality, and he was sentenced to Siberia. I found the letters that he sent from Siberia very moving. And he came back to Leningrad, and he died in 1963. So when I had all this information from the archives, from witnesses in Germany, from witnesses in Russia, I was able to go to the Baltic and make my diving. So I went with 18 people altogether, divers, photographers, diving medicine doctors, archaeologists, historians from 4 countries, and we dived on the Steuben shipwreck. That's the small vessel that 42 meters long with 10 people crew that I was able to rent because sky was the limit, of course. And the underwater photographer that is on my right here on that picture is Christoph Gerrig. He received WordPress Photo twice, the highest absolutely possible prize for the photographer. And we are going down here. It takes about 3 minutes to go down on the depth of 72 meters. And the first thing that we saw, there were nets, of course. Plenty of fishing nets. In some parts of the ship, in some parts of the shipwreck, there were no nets. We could very easily explore the shipwreck. That's the hole that was made by torpedoes, about 10 meters long, about 4 meters wide. We had also ROV robot that we sent down. And at the very end of our expedition, Dr. Heinz Peters from German embassy in Warsaw came to pay tribute, a homage to the people who died there. He brought a bunch of flowers, white and red flowers, and came with a short speech about that he would like never to see again anything like that on our planet. And for me, it was not only great experience as a diver. It was not only for me great experience because I love such kind of adventurous expeditions, but also as a journalist, I was able to write the story that made cover story at National Geographic. Thank you very much.